everyone, and welcome back. Today, we are excited to be talking to award-winning and optioned screenwriter CJ Knapp. CJ, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Barb. I'm very excited and thrilled to be here.
Thank you. Now, before we get started, I'd like to know, how you got started in screenwriting, and you do TV writing as well. Where did you begin doing this? Have you done it always, or what was your inspiration?
I started with doing some writing, like copywriting and article writing. I ended up in a Santa Fe, New Mexico, at a screenwriting convention out there just to see what it was all about. Absolutely fell in love with the medium. I think William Goldman was there. He had his Oscar, passed it around the room, and
Ooh.
it was it. I was like, I knew this was what I wanted to do. I gave up any of the other kind of writing and have been 100% in on screenwriting. I just love the medium.
Okay, so you got bitten by the Hollywood bug.
I did.
You did
Big
indeed.
time.
Okay, so you do both screenplays and you do television, and you have been optioned before multiple projects, both
Yes.
screenplays and TV. That's rare to hear that a writer has been optioned in both areas. Tell us about that. I mean, how did you come about it, and what's been your experience in that area?
Well, marketing is always tricky. I find sometimes using email addresses off IMDb not as always successful. I find LinkedIn is a really good way to connect with producers.
Hmm,
I connected with a producer who was looking to put a slate of projects together,
okay.
and he asked me for my best, and he took 3 or 4 of the ones that I had put out there and had them up there on his slate.
Hmm,
He regrettably, though, with all the strike and everything else, has kind of forced his hand. He's moved back into the private industry. So I'm back to marketing, but I was very excited. I think he had really good projects going on there, and I was thrilled to see him trying to make that move.
Were you able to ask him for any kind of referral in the business to anybody else, like maybe an agent, for example?
I didn't ask him on the agent side. Good point. I will, but I did talk to him that he still knows people in the industry. He has his old partner who's doing some stuff over in Asia. So I said, let's stay in touch. Let's see how we can, what happens from here, and we'll see. I figure you don't burn bridges. Somebody's eventually will come back around again. So,
Right. Yeah. You don't want to be upset if someone, cancels
oh
an
no,
option or anything because they could get studio funding the next day.
yeah, he has been always upfront. I really respect it. I think we connected on a good level. I think that's important when you find a partner in this business, is finding somebody you can connect to and talk to. And I knew all about when his girlfriend, that they were getting married, and it was fun, to also have that personal connection. And we're still connected on Facebook and stuff. I just, I understand this was not going to be the avenue, so I will be out building more relationships with other producers.
Yeah, never burn bridges. That's such an important point, and no one's really brought that up before because you don't know, like yesterday's coffee boy could be tomorrow's like CEO of Universal Studios or something. This is a
Great to
crazy
go.
business like that. So you
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, where someone's going to be next time, and they remember you if you were mean to them.
Yeah.
So
No,
be kind to everybody.
I'm always thrilled that when somebody takes an interest in anything I've done, and I appreciate that. So I work from that point of view.
Okay. And you also have won awards before. So let's talk about one of your projects here. It's called Suppression. It's an action thriller. So tell
Yeah.
us about your project. Start with your log line, if you don't mind.
Okay. It's after an agent is gravely wounded, his personality is transferred to an android, a medical android. And in a race against time, the android must finish the mission that the agent was on to stop a power-hungry media mogul, but he's not sure what the mission is because the transmission wasn't completed, and him being a medical bot tends to fight the urge to be aggressive. So it's a
Mm,
fun action thriller as he tries to figure out his mission.
okay. And are you currently marketing that? And I believe you said that one had been optioned. So where are you at with that one now?
I'm actually taking it back to market. It actually also won the Script Summit Scene Table Read winner.
Oh,
So
cool.
I feel like it has a lot of good likes on it. So I'm very excited about putting that one back out there again. The suppression is what they're trying to do is suppress free will. And I think that's always timely for in today's environment. So I think
That's
that's,
very timely. Unfortunately, it's too timely, if you know what I mean. So, yeah. Now tell me, what is your writing process? Because you've written across a lot of different genres and both in the motion picture and television. So like, where do you draw your inspiration from and what is your writing process?
well, I tend to do mostly some sort of a thriller aspect. Um, that resonates with me. My process is, you work through coming up with that high concept. And I studied at Gotham and Screenwriting U to help develop and fine tune that process. Then I try to outline it and develop what my characters are, what are their traits. I want to know where I want each scene to go, what's the beginning, middle, and end of that scene. What is my protagonist doing in every scene? What's the impact on my protagonist? So I kind of work at it from that angle. Sometimes I know where I want something to end, and I'll work from that way and start figuring out what has to happen in order to get there, what has to happen in order for that to get there. But outlining to me is really key.
Yes, absolutely. I love when you said that you write every scene like what's the impact on your protagonist. So I think a lot of times you'll see a lot of filler scenes everywhere.
Yeah.
Like every scene has to impact the protagonist, even if the protagonist is not in the scene. It
It
has
must be
to,
about them.
yeah, it has to impact them directly, indirectly, or build up to impacting them. It may seem like a nothing scene and then a nothing burger, and then later it ends up being something that impacts the protagonist. So that's a really wonderful point that you brought up. Okay, so let's talk about one of your other projects. You also have the Diary of Souls, which was also optioned. Tell us about that project.
That one is a really interesting one. I really enjoyed writing this one. A woman finds a diary of a murdered woman. And as she reads through this diary, her life begins to mirror the life of the woman in the diary.
Oh,
And it unlocks one page at a time, and she is getting sucked into this and becoming this person in this diary. And with only a few pages left to expose the killer or be killed, or basically it's her soul gets sucked into the diary and be left to somebody else to start the process over again. And it's how she, must ultimately break that connection.
okay. Now that one is more along the lines, it's a thriller, but what kind of thriller would you classify that in terms of genres? What type of thriller would you?
I'd probably call it a supernatural kind of
Supernatural,
thriller.
yeah, it kind of sound like that, but I want to make sure. Okay, where are you at with that particular project? 'Cause that's also, I believe you have it as an optioned one. So where are you at with that one, or was optioned?
That one was option. It was one of the ones that has reverted back. So I'm currently in the process of updating my query letter, making sure it's current and marketable, and getting ready to take it back. I've found a few things out there on ISA and Inktip that I think would be a good fit for it.
Have you ever taken the approach of trying to get an actor attached to the project, some kind of talent?
I have not, I don't have that connection, so to speak. I would love to. I do live in the Midwest, so it's more of a challenge sometimes to get some of that done. But I have considered like going after a role that I think would be really good for somebody. I know when I had one of my TV series, there was, it's a Asian cast, and I had several people who I thought would be very good in that I was going to reach out to their people to say, hey, this would be a really good role for them to try to do that. So
Sure.
that I have not done, but it's on my radar.
Yeah, and if you're going to do that, try to pick actors or that have their own production companies because they're technically, that means they're a producer too.
Yeah.
They have that in, and they're a lot more flexible, like the producers are, in terms of looking at something like. Okay, so let's talk about one of your other projects. Let's see, it's called The Memory Hunters, and this one is a sci-fi thriller.
This one takes place in the not too distant future, with technology is being used to retrieve memories.
Mm.
Things like, you've forgotten where you put your will and testament, or where did you hide the china or the silver or whatever. But in this particular one, a memory hunter is trying to use what she finds to hide a memory. She was abducted as a child,
Oh.
and the only one that was able to escape. But she finds falsified records and triggers an alarm. So they end up putting her back into the mind of the person had abducted her. So now she has to come to terms with her childhood and escape the mind. So I'm very
Wow.
excited about that one as well.
That's a wicked twist, putting the protagonist in their own antagonist head.
Yeah.
That is like almost devious. I love it. Now you have one on here that you didn't list today that you wanted to talk about, but I want to talk about it because I read
Okay.
it and it's called Corpse Garden. It's one of my
Oh, yes.
favorites. I don't know. I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot. I don't know if you had it ready or not, but tell us about Corpse Garden.
Well, Corpse Garden was co-written with Ferdinand Bernhardt, and actually it was his idea. He came to me,
Yes.
and it's a very interesting, dark, twisted kind of story. And it's one of those revenge is best served cold kind of
Mhm.
stories.
Yeah.
It is a revenge thriller where a childhood star comes back to go after the person she thinks killed her brother,
Mhm.
and in doing so entraps the guy's daughter, and she takes bodies and puts them into her garden,
Mhm.
which hence the name Corpse Garden.
Yeah.
So it's very dark, very twisted, but it's very unique as far as movies go, and revenge thrillers. You don't see a lot of those, so I think it has some really interesting legs to it.
Yeah, revenge thriller is a category a lot of writers don't touch, but it has its own audience, and it's not as populated as some of the other areas like sci-fi thrillers and that in terms of your competition. Okay, so one of the things I want to ask you is have you noticed a difference in marketing between marketing to screenplay producers and to television producers who are technically showrunners? Is there a different approach, or have you noticed they ask you for different things? Or tell us about the marketing experience, the difference between those.
For when I market the TV series, I also have pitch decks. And a lot of times that may be all my foot in the door is. They're happy to take a look at the pitch deck. And I usually offer to follow up with the pilot. The one particular pilot that I have out, the Portal Keepers, I've actually written the first episode, the pilot, and the second one. And one of the things when I do the marketing is it's also something that could be packaged as a feature.
Oh,
So
okay.
it gives a
Good
little
idea.
extra opportunity, if you will.
Sure.
I do have pitch decks, if you will, for my features, but people tend to want more of the pitch Bible on the TV series. So I tend to lead with that a lot more. Well, and since it's such a visual industry, giving them a sizzle or the YouTube thing helps them visually see it to what
Yes.
you're trying to accomplish.
Right. That's why when we do our pitch decks here, we do it on a cinematic level, not just the generic things that look like animation or something. We do a cinematic. So very,
Right.
very important. And that's a good way to get that in because if they can visualize it a little bit in their heads, they're more likely to say, you know, I want to take a look at this because they don't want to take the chance someone else will get it. Now, if you were to have meet an aspiring writer, let's say in a cafe, and they knew about you and your options and your success in the awards you've won, what kind of advice would you give them? They said, "Hey, I'm just starting out. How do I do this?"
I would say, make sure you take some classes on it. When I first started, there weren't a lot of classes. I've learned a lot from Screenwriting You. I've learned to use subtext more, how to make the descriptions really fly much faster. People tend to, beginning writers, and myself when I was included, have big long paragraphs describing what was on the desk. You don't need that. So it would be, take some classes in it, watch a lot of films, and read a lot of screenplays. I try to read a couple of screenplays every week. I'm also a judge on a contest. And so automatically I'm reading 4 to 6 scripts a week for that contest.
Good idea.
And it's also good for me. I'm like, oh, that's a new way of presenting something. I'll
Mhm.
even look it up. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that was a good technique. So I'm learning as well as, reading through these screenplays. But it's important that you really hone the craft by watching the movies and the things that you want to write and reading the screenplays and understanding. Don't put your camera directions in.
Right.
And I can't stress enough too, the proofreading is also key. I've written reading screenplays and all of a sudden like, Elaine, who's Elaine? Where'd that
Right.
come from? They changed the name and they missed one of their,
Right.
find place kind of things. But it takes you out of reading the screenplay. So it's really is important that to really, really do pay attention to the details.
Okay, so in conclusion, we've got a lot of producers out there. Is there something in specific you'd like to say to them or like to pitch to them? This is your opportunity to do so.
I really would like to, we've talked about suppression. I just feel like that has got some really timeliness in it. It's action. It's got a little bit of the sci-fi futuristic in it. It's a thriller, has some great comedic moments in it that breaks up some of the tension. That's one I would like to do and love a chance to talk to somebody.
Okay, great. And we are going to have all her information here on YouTube down in the description links and her links in that below. And you'll also be able to find that on our website at extremescreenwriting.com. Thank you very much, CJ, for being with us today.